Europe is rushing to fill the diplomatic gap nearly 3 weeks after the US and Russian presidents failed to reach a peace deal to end Moscow's war in Ukraine. In Paris today, Kyiv's Western allies, known as the Coalition of the Willing, held talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. French President Emmanuel Macron says 26 nations have pledged to provide post-war security guarantees to Ukraine if a ceasefire is reached. Have a listen.
In the coming days, we are going to finalize the American support for these security guarantees. The United States, as I mentioned, has been involved in every step of the process.
Well, the White House says Mr. Zelenskyy and Mr. Trump spoke on the phone earlier. Both US and European officials raising the idea of secondary sanctions, which would impact countries that trade, of course, with Russia. Trump says Europe must stop purchasing Russian oil and put economic pressure on China. Our Melissa Bell has more for you on Europe's post-war plan from Paris.
President Macron says there are now 26 countries within the Coalition of the Willing that have pledged to be on the ground in Ukraine post a ceasefire agreement. This came after a meeting of members of that coalition, some by video conference, some who were here in Paris this Thursday, and a long phone conversation of the group with President Trump. Very few details emerged about exactly what the American guarantees, the so-called backstop, would look like. We understand from the French president that those details will be finalized in the coming days, but certainly the headline as he spoke alongside the Ukrainian president who'd requested this meeting, that a growing number of countries are willing to pledge their presence in Ukraine once a peace deal has been found. For now, of course, there is no sense that the trilateral meeting that President Trump had been looking towards, bringing together the Ukrainian and the Russian presidents, is anywhere near happening. President Macron calling once again on the Russian president to try and make his way to the negotiating table. But these security guarantees that this mainly European group have been looking at are really designed to try and show that they are serious about the technical issues they've now discussed at length to ensure that Ukraine is able to maintain its stability and independence once a peace deal has been struck. There have been questions about where these foreign troops might be located. President Macron said the details of the regions in which they'd be stationed would be considered. There had been some concern about whether any of these troops might be near front lines. That, again, will be for future negotiations and future announcements. For now, though, from a very small number of countries who seemed willing to commit to being on the ground in Ukraine, a list that has grown now to include 26 at the end of this particular meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, according to President Macron. Melissa Bell, CNN, Paris.
Well, President Zelenskyy says there is an understanding as to which countries are prepared to send troops to bolster Kyiv's force. Earlier, I spoke with Nick Petermorsch about what this support may potentially look like. Joining us now is our Nick Petermorsch. So, Nick, 26 countries agreeing to these security guarantees. What would that look like on the ground, and what role would the US play potentially here?
There's a huge amount we don't know about this. What we do know is the psychological significance of European countries like France, probably the United Kingdom, saying that they would put troops on the ground physically inside of Ukraine. Russia's already rejected that as a principle, but for Ukrainians, it is huge. European military powers saying that they will have their backs in a physical form. The American involvement here, Trump has reassured everybody that he's not going to put US boots on the ground, but they will provide what the Europeans call a backstop, which is logistics, intelligence, importantly, support militarily on the ground, and also air power. So if any peace deal comes, which, look, that's still miles off as we speak, there could be some kind of freeze along the front lines, and the Americans could potentially use their significant air force, easily able to challenge the Russian air superiority at the moment on the front lines, to basically freeze the skies, to stop the nightly drone and missile assaults. There has been talk in the media of the possibility of some kind of DMZ along the front line, where you keep the militaries 40, 30 kilometres apart, essentially the distance that drones can fly now. Zelensky's rejected that, saying, look, you're basically asking Ukraine to retreat further and give the Russians an advantage, and that already drones make that kind of DMZ already exist, the grey zone, as they call it. So we don't know a lot about the details, but it looks like you would see European troops almost certainly in the capital, probably in a major city like Dnipro down here. They talk about defending the ports. That's going to mean Odessa here as well. But are you going to see them on the front line? I would say almost certainly not. They're going to be there as a psychological backup to the Ukrainians, saying that Europe and essentially by extension NATO has your back, but not actually doing any fighting.
And if we quickly have a look at the map in terms of the front lines, you were there, 2 weeks or so ago. Give us a sense, or 2-3 weeks ago, give us a sense of what that looked like.
Look, so the whole peace deal we talked about in Alaska potentially, we heard Putin ask for the rest of this, Donetsk, in exchange for stopping the fight. Now, he has desperately been trying for a year almost to take Pokrovsk down here. They made progress over the past weeks. That's slowed. People we're talking to there on the Ukrainian side saying they think the Russians are having what they call kind of a smoking break, re-equipping, bringing up new units, getting ready for another push. They'll almost certainly make another effort where they've moved quite fast up here towards Konstantinivka. That's another key frontline town. And in their sights to Kramatorsk, where they've been moving fast up here, held back by the Ukrainians to try and cut that off too. Why is Putin playing for time? Because he thinks if he gets enough ground here, makes enough progress here before winter, he'll change the reality of what he controls and therefore get a much more comprehensive and likeable peace deal, if he even wants that then.
He certainly has the support from his ally Xi Jinping, of course, and Kim Jong-un. Nick, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.